Thermopylae is one of the most famous ancient Greek battles, and I would actually go even as far to say one of the most famous battles in history. Now, this particular battle is quite controversial, and in this video I'm going to try and bring you the most up-to-date and factual information that I can. With that out of the way, let's start the clock. Now, there were actually two Persian invasions of Greece, the first one with King Darius, and the second one with his son Xerxes. Around 499 BC, during the Ionian revolt against the Persians, Athens and a few other city-states sent aid to the cities of Ionia in an attempt to rid the Persians from that region. In 492 BC, the Persians managed to crush the revolt, and Darius then assembled a fleet to punish the Greek polis, or city-states, that aided the Ionians. This is when the first Persian invasion of Greece took place. At first, they captured many smaller islands along the Aegean, and then they clashed with the Athenians at Marathon. After the Persians' defeat at Marathon, their conquest of Greece was put on hold. Later, in 482 BC, Xerxes then re-attempted his father's conquest of Greece. The Persian army crossed the Hellespont and marched through Thrace and Macedon to Thessaly. It was in a pass known as the Hot Gates that an allied force of around 7,000 Greeks would take their stand. Elected to lead this force were the Spartans. An issue, though, was that the Spartans were in the religious festival known as the Carneia, which did not allow Sparta to wage war. Instead, Sparta sent 300 men, as well as one of the two kings, Leonidas. It is actually unsure whether these 300 were the king's personal bodyguard, or whether they were just hand-picked, but they did all have living sons. Along with these 300 homoioi, or Spartiates, were about 700 helots, a working servant class in Spartan society, which also fought alongside their masters. Unlike many people think, this dispatchment was most likely not a suicide mission. Instead, it was quite a legitimate force that's goal was to hold the Hot Gates until the Carneia ended, which then allowed the rest of the Spartan army to advance. However, Plutarch states that before departing, Leonidas did say to his wife Gorgo to marry a good man and bear strong children, which could suggest that Leonidas had no plan of returning. As for the Persian army, Herodotus describes it as stretching from sunrise to sunset, and popular legend had it that its numbers were 3 million strong, though modern day estimates put it at about 250,000, which is still quite a large number as the population of the world at the time was only about 150 million. Once positioned in the pass, Xerxes thought that the smaller Greek force would disband. Herodotus writes that when they did not flee, the Persians sent out scouts, and Xerxes was shocked to learn that the Spartans were wrestling naked and others were combing their long hair. Xerxes then summoned Demaratus, who was an exiled Spartan king, and demanded to know what they were doing. He was told that these particular acts meant the Spartans were preparing to risk their life in battle. However, even after consulting Demaratus, he still did not believe that such a small force would stand in his way. Herodotus reports that Xerxes waited 4 days before becoming angry and then ordered the attack. Unfortunately, Leonidas' come and take them line is most likely a myth, as only later sources include this line, and the fact that Herodotus doesn't make sense, as he did have quite a liking for drama, and would have surely included this line. However, the Spartan general Dionysius' quote, "We will fight in the shade," after being warned about the Persian arrows blocking out the sun, did most likely happen. The Hot Gates got its name from a thermal spring at the pass, and where Leonidas made his stand, it forced the Persians to funnel themselves into the gates, making their cavalry and numbers far harder to use to their advantage. Thermopylae was also a natural bottleneck between central and northern Greece. Due to corrosion, the pass looks very different today, but back then it was only about 100 metres wide, and where Leonidas chose to take his stand was only about 15 metres wide. This was also where the Phocian Wall once stood, and the Allied force rebuilt it. Although we did not know exactly what happened during the days of fighting, the Greeks did hold. The first few waves they fought were mainly made up of Medes and Scythians. However, they did also beat the famous Immortals, which was actually a name given to them by the Greeks, but they were actually the most elite force of the Persian army. What we do know about the fighting, though, is that most sources write about it being relentless, and actually the Greeks fighting in relays. Sadly, by the end of the second day, the Greeks were betrayed by Ephialtes, a local farmer of sorts. Leonidas was informed about the goat path, and had actually positioned a force of Phocians to guard it. However, the Phocians did make a fatal flaw by retreating to higher ground once they saw the Persians, thinking that they would fight them, but the Persians just ran straight past to the rest of the allied force. Leonidas sent most of the Greeks home, but he and his Spartans, as well as the Helots, and as well as about 700 Thespians stayed. With them being flanked from both sides, it was not long until the Greek force fell, allowing Xerxes into mainland Greece. Right, that was the Battle of Thermopylae in 5 minutes. I hope you guys enjoyed that more quick summary, so please, if you did enjoy that video, found it informative, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!